Welcome back to another episode of The Beginner's Guide to the 18th Century. My name is Kendall, and I have to tell you, I am very excited and honored about today's guest. I love every single guest who comes on and has a conversation with me, but today this is really a very special episode featuring Lauren Stowell, co-founder of American Duchess. Thank you so much for being here. I'm completely honored. So happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am stoked to be here too.
We're going to have a fun conversation. I wouldn't imagine that anybody who's watching this has no idea who you are, but I'll give, just in case we have somebody brand new who's just said, oh, there's this living history community and costuming community. I'm going to go check that out. So American Duchess is it's much more than a shoe company, but you are a widely known shoe company. And obviously you cover shoes from many, many eras, not just the 18th century, but at many reenactment, at many a living history site, you will see a pair of American Duchess shoes on a woman's feet, and it is a wonderful sight to see. And then also you have books. So I actually have the books here that you guys have published. That's your most recent book, which is just great. And we'll get into that. I have to tell you, I used that for hair and that was the most fun. But anyway, you have this incredible company and brand that has serviced the 18th century community and other communities as well for such a long time. I know that you have been at this for quite some time, and there are a lot of us who are very, very new to this community, and the work that you've done in addition to your store it's so resourceful. So that's why I'm thrilled to have you on, because I know you're passionate about helping people who are new to the living history community learn to costume and beyond. So before we get into all of that, I always ask, how did you get started in the costuming or living history community?
Well, whenever I get this question, it's kind of evolved over the years, because the more I think about it, the more it wasn't just one thing. So you used to say, oh, it was that one Renaissance fair I went to with my mom when I was in high school. But then when I think further back than that, I think, well, maybe it goes back to like childhood, listening to the 57 Billboard hits on cassette tape in my mom's car when I was like 4. Maybe that's where it started. Or maybe it started with, admiring that one girl who wore vintage clothes in high school. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was that one history teacher. So I think with a lot of people, you get sort of, I don't know if we're bored with this or it's just really early influences that then get you to going to your first reenactment or going to your first Scottish Games when I was 6, or going to your first costume college or fair of some kind. And then it's that fuse was there, but then it gets lit. And you go, I want to dress like that. I want to wear those costumes. I want to make something. Even though I had no skill whatsoever, no experience with sewing. My mom had a sewing machine, and we went to the store, and I was like, I want to make a Renaissance dress. And I chose this bustier pattern. And we made it out of rayon velvet, which I immediately ironed flat because I didn't know you couldn't iron velvet. So it kind of started there. I got bit by the bug. I just wanted to be in that world. Everybody looked like they were having fun. I was attracted to the visual of it. And later on, as I tumbled down that rabbit hole, I got super, super into the construction. And this is what I'm still into today, construction and the why behind why people were making clothes in the way that they were. Why did they wear these layers in this way? What does that tell us about their world and how they operated within it? And what does it tell us about our world and everything like cars and bathrooms and even this big squishy chair that I'm sat in? How does that relate to my clothing and vice versa? So that's what I really like. Really, really floats my boat these days. It's been a long journey, but yeah, maybe it started with the 57 Billboard hits.
I grew up listening to that too. My mom always listened to like the 50s channel in the 80s, and that was always on in the car. So yeah, I don't know if I can give that credit, but I love that you said that, because I don't think I always have this idea. I have these several living history museum type experiences that I remember when I was young, and making the corn husk doll and making the candles, and being in Girl Scouts and having these different experiences. But it's really, I hadn't thought about it the way that you said it. There was that history teacher. There was the girl wearing the vintage clothes in high school. I mean, yeah, there was the Renaissance Festival visit. So that's a really good point, that it probably for most of us isn't just that one thing. But yeah. So how do you go from having that experience of making the bustier velvet outfit to shoes? What happened between that?
That's a long
because
question.
I know there's a blog involved, and then there's shoes, and now there's so much.
Now there's this this thing. Renaissance Fair, right? Did the thing. And so when my mom and I went, because there's a local fair at Lake Tahoe here, and we were up at Tahoe like in the summer, staying in the cabin. And she's like, hey, there's this thing to go and do. Let's go and do it. So I was like, all right. So we went and did it, and it was fun, and I was into it. But it wasn't until several years after that I had moved to San Jose to go to college. And there is a very, very big costuming and dance community there, Victorian balls and Dickens Fair and Renaissance fairs and all sorts of things to do in costume. Because I think something that a lot of new people struggle with is, well, I want to make this, but I don't really have a reason to. I have this desire to create, but I don't have anywhere to wear it. The Bay Area makes it very, very easy to wear the things that you make. And then also, oh, there's an event coming up. I need to make something for that. And then you meet people and you have friends, and then you goad each other on. You're like, ooh, what are you making for that steampunk ball? You get together and you make Swiss waists and strange corsets, and you get your coat hanger wire out, to quote Christina D'Angelo, and you go and have fun. So that kept the ball rolling. But it wasn't until about 2003 or so that I got a sewing machine and really started like buying patterns and trying to make things out of curtains from Savers. Oh my God. Going down that road with, upholstery to card, like we all do.
Right.
I started my blog in 2009 or so ish. I had graduated from university in 2007. And I think we all know what happened around that time with trying to get a job. I had a degree in art as an illustrator and animator, and I had a hard time finding work, of course. So there was a lot of focus for young people on blogging and maybe trying to open an Etsy shop, or maybe trying to be entrepreneurial any way really that we could, because there just wasn't any work. Right. So I started my blog. I was just like, I don't really know what I'm doing with historic costuming, so I'm going to blog about that and maybe help some people. I'll go experiment with this wig, and then I'll blog about it and maybe help somebody else. And that's where it started. It just sort of took off from there. We didn't start the shoe company till 2011. So I had moved back to my hometown in Reno, Nevada, into end of 2009. And again, it was just like I was picking up freelance gigs and really, really barely making ends meet. And my now husband was doing the same thing. He was also a freelance creative. And so it was like really, really tight. Always looking for like, can I make costumes and sell them? Can I make cockades and sell them? What can I make and sell them? Like,
the shoe especially I'll say because you're on the West Coast, so it's like, so especially if you're like with 18th century, that's so East Coast. Yeah. So I would imagine that trying to do 18th century stuff is a little more complicated on that side of the country.
I wasn't
quite in 18th century at that point, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was my favorite era, but I wasn't like needle focused on it like I am now. It was really more a general thing. But with the shoe design, that was the style of shoe that seemed to be missing the most. And when I asked people, what do you think of this shoe design? They were like, oh my God, we've been waiting for this for my whole life. So that's where the initial single design, the silk satin Georgiana design came from. And it was just one product, and did a pre-order for it, and it funded overnight. And I woke up the next morning like, oh my God. It was before Kickstarter, before Indiegogo. We just did it on our website with PayPal attached to it. We couldn't take credit cards or anything, just PayPal. And I laugh about this now, but it was not funny at the time. So many people have heard this story, but PayPal, at the time that Kickstarter and Indiegogo and pre-orders for products that had not been manufactured or made yet was becoming a thing, there was no legislation or any kind of rules that really governed that. And so it actually violated PayPal's terms and conditions. So PayPal saw, well, here's this account that used to have maybe like $20 a month coming in from Etsy sales, now has this like big chunk of change overnight. This looks like fraud. And so they froze the account with all the money I needed to make the products that I just sold people.
Oh my gosh.
I had been transferring out. I got a little bit of it out, but I got on the phone with them and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Like, it was not an unknown thing. It was just new enough that there hadn't been any like really rules set in place for how to operate. It's so common now. We're so used to it, pre-orders and Kickstarters and that kind of thing. But back then it was not. And so PayPal let me have some of the money. And then they sent me a list of orders I had to fulfill before they would release the rest of it. And on those orders were like 3 that were in Australia and were custom dyed. So I was like, all right, I can do that. They're going to take a while to get there because they had to see delivery confirmations before they would check those off. It was a list of like 5 or 6, I think. So the first order of shoes was completed. It was in the truck on the way to the airport, and the truck caught on fire and everything in it burned.
Lauren,
yeah,
crazy. Okay,
it
so
almost
like
doesn't sound true, but it happened.
A person at that point would probably go, "This is here's the signs. Here are the signs. Not do this."
But I had like I had people's trust, and I also had people's money, so I had to deliver, and I had spent the money to make the product.
Right.
So like, there was no other option. So the factory was like, "We're gonna remake them." They were insured. They weren't out of our possession yet. But it meant more time. So another 3 months, and of course a bunch of emails to everybody saying, "We're really sorry," but. And like nobody canceled. I think one person canceled out of everybody because our community is amazing and super supportive. So they remade them. They arrived. I was able to ship them. But it was many, many moons after the initial pre-order.
Did things get easier after that once?
No. I mean, in comparison to like the fun things that are happening in our world right now, those things, we're laughing about them at the time. But I mean, we had crazy stuff happen. We had I think it was our 4th style Astoria. We had done it for the Titanic Centennial, and the pre-order was really successful. Everybody was super excited about these shoes, and we actually still sell this style too. They're really popular. And the intention was we're going to get them delivered to everybody before April of 2012. Well, they showed up, and this was a really hard lesson for me in quality control because we had not had them quality checked because I was a total neophyte. I didn't know that you had to do that. They showed up and the quality was really, really bad, like unsellable, like, whoa, could not send these to people. Wrinkles and divots and discoloration and cracking and like all kinds of horrible stuff.
Right.
So once again, hey everybody, really sorry we can't, deliver these in good conscience, deliver these to you. And a few people canceled, had them remade. I mean, it was just, we've been lucky. I'm not usually a big believer in luck. I believe a lot in, you kind of like reap what you sow and you make your way and you get through stuff. But we've been lucky, because there have been other people who, and some of them contacted me and said, I tried to do shoes years ago. These are the problems I had. Watch out for this stuff. Then they weren't successful, because that kind of thing can knock you for a loop and you never recover from it. We had a factory that was seized right at the end of one of our production cycles, because the guy that owned the factory owned a whole bunch of other businesses. He's what is called gray, not strictly legal. Never had any contact with this man. He was just the owner.
Right.
But he wasn't strictly legal in business, and so all of his properties were seized, and everybody in them was thrown in jail and questioned for quite some time. So yeah, we got our stuff got forwarded by the Chinese government. We were manufacturing in China at that time, but we had no idea for a long time if we were going to get any of the product that we had ordered and paid for.
Right.
And it just sort of showed up one day. We're like, okay, lucky.
Yeah, that does seem, I would say that does feel very lucky. Now, okay, so let's go back to, you had the 18th century shoe was the first shoe that you produced, but then what was the inspiration to go, okay, well, that worked and people like that, so now let's expand, because I don't know how many eras you do, so many eras now.
We do. We don't currently have anything that is Elizabethan or 17th century, but we have done, and we do want to do more of those. So we do, let's say we do everything from Elizabethan through to the about 1950, early 1950s. We don't have that category on the website. We call it everything's 1940s, but that's our range now.
Yeah. So how did you go from just having 18th century and then moving into a wider variety?
Well, we just looked for the holes. What's not available? What are people asking for? What is there a market for that isn't being served? For instance, 18th century is a big market. Victorian is a big market. There are periods that come in and out of trend within our world. So like Victorian was huge in the 90s, but it's not as popular now as 18th century, maybe-ish. I think it's coming back. Edwardian's getting really big. It used to be really big. It kind of spent some time not being that popular in the last few years, and now it's seeing an uptick again. So it's what is the trend, and are there shoes for it? Or is there enough choice for it? Not every style and period that we do, it really works well for us. Regency is a really, really difficult period for us. Nothing that we've ever made for Regency has sold well.
Really?
Not a single design. Not a one. And it's because the shoes are really, really simple, and they can be found, that style or that shape or silhouette can be found pretty easily from like Target, Amazon.
Right. True. Yeah.
So we have a hard time with that. But the more distinct the shoe is, the better it is. So like button boots, we may not be the only company, but for a long time we were the only company doing button boots, because they're really challenging. As a mass-produced product, they're really challenging for fitment and even for manufacturing. But you can't buy those anywhere. So we're like, well, let's make those. Okay, let's make those.
Yeah. So you have this success, and even though you have these crazy things happening, people are still, I imagine that your audience is growing and your brand is growing and people are excited. And then you start to consider doing the books, because I guess you definitely have passion helping people get into this and figure out kind of the intricacies of it, right?
Yeah. What is the question? Sorry.
No. So talk a little bit about how you moved from being the shoe producer into, okay, now we're going to create content that's beyond just shoes.
Okay. Well, it started with creating content with the blog.
That's right. So you were already doing the blog that wasn't just shoes. That was just costuming and content, right?
Yeah, it was content. And I always tried to write the blog to help other people that might be looking for a dress diary or how the heck do you do that petticoat over a pannier? I don't know. I'm going to go mess it up for you so I can then tell you how to do it. Cough, cough. So the books actually kind of came out of the blue, the first book, because of the blog. So I was contacted by the publisher Page Street Publishing, who their business model at the time was to find bloggers, because it's like reading a sample. You can read somebody's
Right.
style and you can see how they write and how they lay stuff out and all of that, and then contact them and ask if they wanted to write a book, which is what happened. I thought it was spam at first. Turns out it was legit. And so that's how the first book happened. It was really completely at random.
Yeah.
The second,
and then there you go. Right.
the second on publication day of the first, because it had pre-ordered so well, they offered the second book on publication day, which was pretty awesome.
Wow.
So that it was the hair book after that. So
they're so great too. And I typically do a camp follower impression, or a lower, sometimes middling class impression of 18th century. And so pretty much throwing my hair in a cap is all I ever do. But I had an event, a virtual event, as we've all gone virtual, for a garden party, a happy hour kind of thing. And I was like, all right, I don't have everything, but I wouldn't even be able to pronounce it, and I would just embarrass you if I tried to say which I are they? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's one that's an accurate name, but and we wrote this at the beginning of like, the reason we did that with the French names is because the French love to name everything, and they could be quite funny with their names, whereas the English were a little bit more like, it's a frizzed hairstyle, it's a hairstyle.
Right.
Like there's no names for things.
It's kind of like Starbucks language. Starbucks language isn't really a language.
I'll have a venti hairstyle, please, with mocha whippy frap. Oh, I love it. Yes, so it's the French. When you go and look at the fashion plates, especially like, and MFA.org has a fantastic collection of the Gallery de Mode fashion plates that you can zoom in on. But you'll see something that looks like 5 of the same hairstyle with 5 different names, and you're like, but why?
Just pretty words. Okay, so this is the one. This is the one that I attempted. Yeah. And I got the banana, and I managed to just pull off. I had enough things to pull off a front half, and I was like, well, nobody's going to see the back, so that won't matter. That's
Put a cap on it.
I was sitting in a chair straight on Zoom, so it worked out. It worked out lovely, but it was a lot of fun. And I even had like some setting powder, some translucent setting powder from like Ulta or Sephora or something, and I just and it was white, so I just powdered with that, and and it was really it was a lot of fun. And I was like, oh no, I might be hooked now. I might have to actually I might have to go do other things. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to the Williamsburg garden party. I think this is all happening. So you got me hooked. And I have to say, my friend actually, who makes a lot of things for me, she actually got me the 18th Century Beauty book as a gift. And that was really cool. She got one for herself and one for me. So that was really special. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about beginners and advice. And I know the blog is still available, right? Can you still go to the blog, or is that still up?
It's still there. I don't update it as much as I used to, or as much as I should.
Right.
I try to do that, even though blogs, I think there's this idea that blogs are defunct, but as far as like something that lives on the internet that you can access,
right? Yeah.
Like a tutorial, there's nothing better than maybe like a video. But as far as like a step-by-step working through something, I still think blogs have a lot of power, and so I'm going to try to keep writing on the blog for all of my projects. And
I think especially if it's an established blog and it has been around sitting with SEO on the internet for as long as yours has, absolutely it has an enormous amount of ability to get out there and help people. So people can go to that. But let's say somebody's just coming in, they're watching this, and they're like, I just need a starting point, or I just need some advice, because I feel like you probably get 1,000 DMs a day with people asking you those questions. What's some general advice that you often give to people who are just starting? Or
I
is that
usually
like way too
go,
vague? Is that too overall?
well, everybody kind of has their own way that they got into this. And so when they give advice, like everybody in our company, when they give advice, it's from their own perspective of how they get started. So some bit of advice might be, oh, start with hand sewing an apron, work on your stitching. But
Okay,
I
yeah.
came at it a different way. I didn't start with hand sewing. I didn't start with historic construction. I jumped in at the deep end of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Here's a really complicated dress pattern. I don't like that sleeve. Let's try this sleeve from over here. And I cobbled a lot of things together. And I made a lot of mistakes. I still make a lot of mistakes, petticoat. I still make a lot of mistakes. But I think the advice that I would give is when I get questions like this, I hear a lot of trepidation around just getting started. They don't know where to start, because I think when you look at the costume community, especially as big as it is, how many resources, how many voices there are now, it seems intimidating, because you've got like the level of stuff that's made and worn, and the looks now are just higher than they've ever been. And so as a noob, I
Yeah.
can see like, oh my God, how am
Oh,
I
it's
ever going to do that?
terrifying. It's terrifying. You think
It's
because all
terrifying.
you see is the perfection that's on Instagram, and you're like, I don't even
Yeah.
know I don't even know what a stitch is called. What? Yeah, I mean,
Where
that
do
was
I
me.
start?
That was
Yeah.
absolutely me. I was that person. So I relate
So
very much
I
to
would say to the beginner, just jump in and do it. And it doesn't matter how you do it, on the machine or by hand.
that.
It just matters that you start. Get a good pattern. I wouldn't recommend trying to scale up gridded patterns for beginners. That is an advanced thing. And it's tempting, but it's like you have to have a basic idea of construction already. So get a good pattern if you're into Victorian, like truly Victorian patterns are good. Actually, JP Ryan makes really, really good dress patterns for 18th century. They're tried and true, and they're good dress patterns.
Yeah.
And just make the thing. Because as you make the thing, you're going to learn along the way. You're going to do things wrong, and then you're going to learn what to do better next time. Or you might even just take it apart and make it again. Like that's a historically accurate thing to do. Like,
Right.
yeah, take it apart, make it again, use the fabric for something else, make a Spencer, make a writing habit, like whatever you're into, just go for the thing. Something that, not to throw my mother under the bus, but my mom, when I started sewing, was very like, she just kept kind of telling me it was too hard for me. It was too hard for me. It was too hard for me. And she was right. It was too hard for me, but I had to go and find out how hard it really was, and really make, my crappy skirt to learn. That's how I learn, is I do a lot of things wrong, and then I kind of like hone it over time until I get proficient at things. I
Right.
had a friend tell me once too, she looked in my costume closet and she looked at my stuff, and she's like, you really do a lot of things wrong. Like, I was like, thanks. I've never had a sewing class. Like, oh, I just make the things because it's what brought me joy. So I would say just take the first step. Not all patterns are good. So look at costumers blogs, or Greater Bay Area Costumers Guild has a webpage, I think it's still up, of pattern reviews, historic pattern reviews. Look at those, buy yourself a pattern, and make the thing, and make the mistakes, and don't be afraid to make the mistakes. Like, there are people in the community, we are one of these accounts, who will absolutely support what you're doing, because it's a journey. Nobody pops out of the womb going, I'm going to make a historic dress by hand and it's going to be great. Like, it's a skill. It is such a skill, and it's a lifelong learning skill. But the idea is to enjoy the process, and then you get to wear it at the end and go have fun with your friends. Like, it's wearable art. Like, that's sweet.
It is.
And hopefully you enjoy the process along
Your
the way.
apron in your book is a really simple place to start, though, too. The apron,
big rectangular one.
Yeah, I've just made my second one, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think that was as a person who, who had not sewn since high school home ec and almost failed that, or middle school home ec. I found that to be, I went down the road of making petticoats first, and trying to figure out pleat math. And that's still to this day the craziest thing ever.
I don't do pleat math.
That's what people I was posting about on Instagram, and that's what people were saying. And I was like, it just won't work for me. My brain needs rules. I need like logic. I need
I admire that.
I know. I don't. I so desperately want to just, everybody's like, if they're looking that close at your pleats, I'm like, I don't care what anybody else is looking or thinking. It's here that I have to like know, okay, I followed this mathematical, added this, it adds a lot of stress onto me that is not necessary, but that's what I started with. And so when I got to aprons, now then I'll overthink. Like right now, the stroke gathers just stress me, because again, I'm not perfectionist. There's nothing going on there with that. But I'm like, I call my friend. I'm like, okay, how do you? So you have to do this each one, and you put, what's the bump? What does this all mean? But then it's like, done is better than perfect. And I really have enjoyed it. So the second, both aprons, I've used your directions in the book, and I think that's a great place to start. And I probably could have started there before the petticoat. That probably would have been. But
you know
easier.
What? Like, I'm exactly the same way. I'm like, look at that beautiful gown. I'm gonna make that. I don't really want to make an apron, and whatever, it bores me. Like making underwear particularly bores the snot out of me. Like making shifts. Oh, I hate it. I have one shift that I made by hand.
Really?
Yes. And I
is it because it's like not a pretty thing that you get to be excited about? Is that why you don't like it?
Yeah. It's plain sewing, and it's boring, and it's not pretty, and nobody sees it, and I don't care. And and that's fine. Yes, if you're trying to develop your hand sewing, the apron, like the neckerchief, the really simple, straight, relatively straight, bias, but relatively straight, seams. You can move on to a really simple cap, that you could go that way. Each person is different though. And we did intentionally put really, really simple projects in the book, as well, both books, as well as the more complicated stuff with the gown. And it is a long haul. Like if you're going to make an entire sack gown with all of the millinery, it is a long-term project, even when you're really proficient. Like the sack I just finished took forever.
I think I followed that journey on Instagram. It looked delightful. Your process looked like you were having a great time with it.
I wasn't. No, I'm glad it's done, because there's a point where you're like, I'm just gonna knock together this robe à la française, and then there's a point where you're like, why is this not done yet? And then 4 days later, it's still not done. But at the end of that, hopefully you have a sense of accomplishment. You could put the thing on, and it fits, and you feel fabulous in it, even if it's not perfect. Because believe me, there are things about that sack that are not perfect.
Right. And nobody's gonna notice
like,
that.
You'll know,
you'll know, but nobody.
There's something that costumers do, and I definitely do this, where we meet, maybe in person someday again, but we meet. And we look at each other's costumes.
By 2022, we'll meet in person.
Right. The planet still exists. We meet and we go, oh my God, your dress is so gorgeous. And the first thing somebody goes is, everything that's wrong. And it's like, it's so uncomfortable, because I definitely do that too. And then I realize I'm making the other person uncomfortable. And I also feel crappy when I do that, because I'm like, what? Just say thank you. Just say thank you.
Yeah. All right. So before we wrap up here, I would love, you gave some really great advice for beginners. Since you are a very established and successful business in the living history community, what advice do you have for a business who is starting up, trying to make their way in this community? Is there any advice you can offer them?
I think the number one thing that I run into, and that I also experienced early on, is that there has to be a demand for what you make. It's it's a bit of a hard lesson. I knocked around for a while trying different products or different businesses, and getting stuck with a lot of things that I made or had printed or whatever, because the hard lesson was that nobody actually wanted what I was trying to sell them, because I wasn't really thinking about them as the customer. I was thinking about me as the artist or the maker. It's in business, it's a fine line between what I want and what everybody else is telling me because ego
Yeah.
gets involved. So I would say, oh, my dogs are gonna bark. I would say look for the hole in the market. What is
Right.
missing? What can you make and you provide that nobody else is, or maybe you could do something better or different? The only reason shoes took off for us, it wasn't because it wasn't the first thing that I'd done, like I just said, but it was the thing that was really, really missing, that was not an easy thing to make for yourself. It is something
Right. Yeah.
that people had been wanting for a long time. It was an underserved market. I didn't start out in this world as a adult, as a shoe designer, as an
Right.
illustrator.
Right.
Animation was my background,
Yeah.
but I loved living history and costuming so much. That was my hobby. But I recognized, like, where the heck do I get shoes? Where do I get shoes? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want like endless searches for Victorian-esque shoes from the 90s, or something that sort of had a feel, or tying ribbons around my Mary Janes to
Right.
pass them off as 18th century. And like, there's got to be something better, and there wasn't. And so that is the little opportunity that came by that I went, I'll try that, and it worked.
Yeah.
So
And
try a
now
lot of
everybody, I
things.
mean, when somebody thinks 18th century shoes, American Duchess is the first thing that
Hopefully
they're
they
going to
think
think.
good things when they think American Duchess and 18th century shoes.
All I hear is good things.
So look for the opportunities, try a lot of things, and fail fast and often, or pivot. That's business term. Pivot. Try something. It's not really working. Come to terms with that thing is not working, and then pivot and go the other way. It's not easy. Running your own business, as you know, is not easy. Challenges every day, and sometimes really big
Right.
challenges.
You might work 14 hours a day for 7 days straight, for 2 weeks straight. You might do that.
Yeah.
You should love
Yeah,
what you
to
do. You should love
love
what you
what you
do.
do. Because
Yeah.
it's hard to stick to it when the going gets rough if you don't
Mhm.
really, really love what you do.
Yeah.
So
If you aren't
that's
completely
that's
invested.
some,
Yeah.
I could talk about business stuff forever, but that's
Yeah.
some advice. It's a little bit of
Yeah.
advice.
I think it's really great. Lauren Stowell, American Duchess, thank you so much. All the links to find all of your products and the blog and all of that are going to be wherever someone is whatever channel you're watching this on. You'll be able to have access to find American Duchess. Thank you so much. This has been a really fun conversation.
Thank
And
you for
I
having me.
absolutely look forward to all the fun things in the future. Thank you so much.